Welcome to So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. Are you evaluating your career in real estate? Feel like you're ready for a fresh start? Or ready to take your career to the next level? This is your podcast. Welcome back to So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. I am your host, Meredith Fogel, and I am here again with my co-host, Alicia Sawakawa. Hello, Alicia.
Hello. Good to
How
see
are
you.
you? Good to see you. Thanks for joining us again today. So we have some good topics to talk about on this particular podcast, and specifically, we're going to talk about things that they did not tell you when you became a real estate agent, which I think are that's a vast number of things that no one
Yes.
tells you, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that, and then what you need to know to be successful in real estate, at least some of it. There's a lot you need to know. But
Yes.
Alicia, knowing what you know this at this point in your career, what would you say are like the top things that you didn't know or that people didn't tell you? And what are you seeing now being a coach of sometimes new-ish agents coming into the business that you wish people knew coming in?
I think the concept of where business comes from. So
Hmm.
I think a lot of people have this idea that you get your license, you get your business card, you get your headshot done, you pass the test, you're at the brokerage that you've chosen to be at, whether it's boutique, large, whatever have you. And you go through the training class that they have sometimes to write the contracts and do the basic minimum. And then you're just wondering why no one will call you to buy or sell a house. And I legitimately have had conversations with people who are like, yeah, I have these business cards. And I told people once that I'm an agent and I just don't know what to do. And well, how long have you been an agent? I've been an agent for 2 years. How many houses have you sold? And zero.
Right.
And they're
Often.
confused. They're like genuinely confused as to why they're not busy. And they
Right.
will say the questions of, I don't know what to do to get more business. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know what to say.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of people get into the business and they do I call them check mark things, like legality things, like you have to get your license, just like you have to have a driver's license to drive a car. Just
Hmm.
because you have a driver's license to drive a car doesn't make you a good driver.
Right. Right.
So I think there's never really an intentionality on how do you look at real estate as running a business. And a lot of people go into it with the employee mentality as
Mm.
this is my job. So I need to go home. Where are they telling me what they're just like waiting to be told what to do. So I think there's that gridlock of the disconnect of where are you coming from. That's why people that come from a job or a situation where they were always told what to do, this is the training, this is what you need to do, this is how you're successful. If they don't join a team that teaches them that and they're just kind of a solo person that they don't know what to do, there's no guardrails, they
Mhm.
literally just stand still. And then they don't want to take the blame of why it's not working for them.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head on that kind of like waiting for business to come and or waiting to be told what to do. I feel like
Mhm.
sometimes it's like, people think about they're opening a store and they're putting their shingle out. They're like, I have that's the business card to them is the shingle that they're putting out. Nobody sees it. I always say to people, just because you build it does not mean that they will come. You've got to do more than
Websites are like that.
that's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
People go, well, I have
Mhm.
my website. I don't know why. I'm not getting any visits. I'm not getting, or social media. No one's liking my post. I don't know. It's the same concept of, you have a party. If you don't invite anybody, no one's going to come. And then you're going to sit there and cry because you spent 4 hours prepping for a party and nobody came. Nobody knew you had the party. Still nobody knows. So you've got to get out there in front of people. And also, if you have a party and invite people who don't know you, they're also not going to come. They'll be like, that's so weird. I got an invitation from this person. I think I've met her once or I've never seen her before in my life. So that's also about the relationship. If you're going to
Yeah.
throw this kind of party, you got to have some kind of a significant interaction with the people that you're inviting for them to even
Yeah.
consider coming to
Yes.
your house, especially if you're going to ask them for a present, right? Which you do when you're asking for their business.
I think that's a great analogy to use because I think they're truly confused. They just don't understand it.
Yes.
And I'm like, what exactly is confusing about that? So I think it's really it's different than like opening a brick and mortar store of like a grocery store or a restaurant. And even restaurants struggle because of that. They just open the restaurant and they just assume because they're at the main road that people are just going to stop and come in, you know?
Hmm.
And all it takes is that one person. to come in that's the right person, that
Mhm.
changes the game.
Yes, in a good way or a bad way. And
Yes.
remember, you do that same, you have that same first person. It's like
Yes.
a restaurant that you come
Yes.
in, they didn't launch properly, you give them a
Yes.
terrible experience, the word of mouth spreads. You got to make sure when you're ready to launch, you've got the skills in place to create a good customer service experience as well. The other thing I always think about is the big thing I feel like people don't get told when they start in real estate is you're really not in the real estate business.
No.
You're in the business of lead generation, specializing in real estate. So when you,
Yeah, I think sales is the game. It's how can you
yeah,
market? How can you get, it's about increasing the number of leads,
yes,
right? And
exactly.
leads are people. Like if you look at leads, like it's really hard because I think when you see the word leads, it kind of gives people that like, I don't
Mhm.
like that feeling. So why don't you look at them as like little heads? Try to get a lot of heads. How many heads can you get? You know, how many bodies can you get? Because
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing is the more bodies you have, the more chances you have to get the appointment, to have the conversion, to get the sale. So
exactly. Exactly.
it's
Yep.
really simple, and it's really almost like disturbingly how simple it is. It's just like people that don't want to, that don't lose weight. I'm like, stop eating and work out. It's very simple. It
Yeah.
really is. There's very few people that have like a true disease issue that they can't lose weight. Like, what are those people who are like, I don't digest or have some process problem? I'm like, okay.
Yeah, in a similar way, it's about creating the right habit, filtering the right way, and realizing you are in control. And if
Yes.
for some reason, like let's say you are cranking out a huge number of leads and you're not converting them, then you have a skills issue. And you got to figure out how
Yes.
to fix that. And this is where I think also it's something that people don't get told when they start in this business is one, you have to lead generate. Two, you've got to gain the skill to convert those leads into business. And three, you've got to gain the expertise to service that piece of business through to settlement and then to keep that person on as a future client. That's where skill comes in again. So there are lots of things that, need to be worked on, but there are some real basic pieces that come into play when you're going to be successful in real estate. One of the things I think is always fascinating to me is I don't know if you see this, Alicia, ever, is people come in and they think that to lead generate means hire somebody to make calls on your behalf.
Yes.
All the time we get, well, I've got an ISA or I've
Yes.
got a VA, virtual assistant,
Yes.
who's doing calls for me, and they cannot for the life of them understand how they're not getting leads. I don't know. I hired this person, they're making 200 calls a day. I don't have gotten no leads yet. I don't understand, right? Or they're doing it's kind of the same thing as just mailing, doing a ton of mailings. Both are revenue suckers, both are going to drain your bank account. And unless you're very careful about the messaging you put out, and the way that you're following up, you're going to get nothing from them. So is that something that you see sometimes?
I would call that, I have a name for that. It's called benign communication.
Ooh, I like that. Benign.
So if you want to kill your business, then you need to lean on benign conversation, which
Mm,
are mailing, mailers only texting, only emailing, like avoiding human interaction. And I think the biggest thing is I'll never forget this when I started my old school um broker who's been in the business now like probably 40 something years. Um and he kind of reminded me of like Al Pacino. Like he just had that like gregarious, like Al Pacino. He's Italian. He just, yeah, one of those kind of people, like one of
yeah.
the coaches, and he was a coach and all that. And he'd come into me, like, Alicia, this business is a belly to belly business, a face to
Yes.
face, belly to belly. You need to stop doing the other things, but get face to face, belly to belly. And I say that because when you do like this, you're like, oh,
Yes.
why
Yes.
are you doing everything but the face to face, belly to
Mm-hmm.
belly? So
Mm-hmm.
that's the conversation you need to have is like, how can I use the benign conversation to use it as a tool to get face to face, belly to belly? That is the goal.
I love it. So understanding benign communication, getting belly to belly. You're just reminding me of I had a coaching call earlier with a client who is killing it right now in a market in which not everybody's doing all that well. And one of the things that she did is went out and started playing a sport that she's always wanted to learn. And she didn't do it to get business at all. She did it because it was like one of the things on her list to do. And wouldn't you know, she goes out there, she starts speaking to other human beings in a very normal fashion, having lunch with people, having just real human conversations. Got one listing from one of those people already, was walking back into the clubhouse, and that person introduced her to somebody else and was like, "Oh my gosh, I heard you're going to sell. This is the person you have to use." By getting out there and doing something that she enjoys anyway, and being, like you said, belly to belly with other people. That's where I feel like sometimes we complicate it so much for ourselves, right? Like we're told to do
So
all these things,
disturbing.
sell all
And how
this.
much did that cost her?
Right, exactly, exactly. Well, it's golf, so it might have been a little pricey, but not as much as, 2,000 postcards, that's for darn sure.
Well, that's
Which
what I was saying. Like
time.
it
Yeah,
definitely didn't cost every single month $2,500 a month
exactly. Exactly.
with
Yeah, and she's
nothing.
getting life fulfillment out of it as well. Totally agree with you. The other thing I feel like people don't tell you when you start in real estate is that this is a business. And you kind of said this before about we're not employees,
Hmm.
we're running our own businesses. So, what do you think is most important about people understanding that this is actually a business?
I think it's really important to look at, again, we always talk about what the outcomes are you're wanting. So
Mhm.
I think a lot of people go in the business and they're like, I want to be number one. I want to be the best agent. I want to have a team of 50. And I want to, it's all about the ego. You're trying to feel this ego of who you're
Yep,
trying to become. Or
yep.
you're comparing yourself to someone else that's your age, or, they were in the class with you and they're doing all these things and you want to do all the things. The question is, I heard this really cool entrepreneur say that believe half of what you see and
Mm.
none of what you hear.
Oh, interesting.
Because half of what you see is an illusion, and
Mm.
everyone just tells you what you want to hear. So don't believe it.
Gosh, so interesting.
And this is someone that's like multi-gajillionaire. He moves money around and stuff like that. But it's the truth. If you really think about it, what are we seeing out there? No one's gonna like no one shows up in their pajamas
Right.
or like crying, in their
Yeah.
nachos. Very few people are willing to really show who they are for the fear of the judgment of, oh, well, people won't work with me if I show them who I am.
Yeah.
And there is that fear. That is something that people don't realize. It's one of the things we'll have to do a podcast on. What do you give up being an agent?
That's a good one.
And you give up a lot, just like people in the public give up
Yes.
that fame. And there's things you give up, there's trade-offs you
Yeah.
get.
Yeah.
And one of the things you have to understand is, what is your outcome? Do you want to net the most money?
Mhm.
Are you using this business to fuel another business? And
Right.
is this business a stepping stool? What exactly are you doing?
Hmm.
Because I think if you go in without the end in mind, like we've talked about that many times before, but some people are just not hearing it. Like, what is the end game here? Because I have
Right.
people that are in their 60s and they have no plans to leave the business. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you got a plan to do something. Were you just gonna keep doing this? Like, come on. And they're like, I
Yeah.
didn't think about it. I'm like, you might want to think about it. Like, come on, people.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
and what you're saying too about planning ahead is so
Oh,
important. And that's another thing nobody tells you is that you need to come at this with a plan. Like you were saying, most people kind of like luck into their first couple of pieces of business, or maybe they organically generated their first piece of business or got a referral or something like that, but they just start rolling. And they
yeah.
never stop to think, they never stop to plan, they never stop to reflect on how they got from where they were to where they are. And they end up at this place where they look back and they're like, what am I doing? Or like your people you're just talking about, not even thinking about what might the future look like and how that needs to inform the business that they're building. Happens all the time.
It
Happens.
happens probably like a lot. I would say that's 99% of the people in the
Oh
business.
yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
some people are building things by default and
Yes.
also building it as if nothing else is going to change, like that it's static.
Mm.
So
Mm.
like everybody ran their business in 2020 to 2023, like it was never going to ever not be like that.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And they started
Yeah.
getting inflated leaderships and buying buildings and creating these things, thinking all these, and then all of a sudden the NAR hit, and then the interest rates hit, and then and then the election. So it's like a ba bam, ba bam, ba bam, and now everyone's like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Like they're like, I don't like this anymore. Like I can't tell you how many team leaders we're talking to now that are going back into production that they had been out.
Yes. Yeah.
They realize the profitability is just not there.
Mhm.
Right. And so many people, like big businesses, that are like, what are we doing here? We're not looking at what we're bringing home. We're just spending, 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 spending. And the agents are like, what have you done for me lately? Because we
Mhm.
created that monster.
Yes. Yes.
And we're talking
Absolutely.
team leads, right? We create the monster for the agents that come in as teams, right? If we do this for you, will you stay with us?
Right. Right. Yeah. I think the other thing that you're hitting on here is another piece that we don't get told when we come into the business, which is that it's a business for profit. That seems to be like, I don't know why for some people it feels like it's a dirty word or a negative concept, but we are in business to make money. That's why we do this. Yes, it's fulfilling. Yes, we're serving people. Yes, it's fun. It can be fun. Sometimes it's not fun, but most of the time it's pretty fun to help people get the house that they've dreamt of or make a significant transition in their lives. But we need to keep an eye on our profit.
Yeah.
And I think that's another interesting piece, and this keeps resurfacing in things that we're reading and that we're listening to, podcasts and other messages, is that when we're in this business, often we're like an innovator, we're a visionary, we're a creator, we're inspirational leaders, and often those attributes don't align well with a business person.
No,
So being both of those is really hard. And I think that's a big piece that we're never told is you're going to wear so many hats, and two hats that are pretty
different.
opposite of one another. Yeah, are the most important hats that you can wear. What are your thoughts on
I
that?
I agree with you, but I think too, we need to be more open-minded to have self-awareness. I think there needs to be class on self-awareness. I think the ego
Mhm.
gets really big really quick. And I'm
Yes.
sure you've seen it with agents. I've seen it, and you're like, what happened to them? Like they were so great and humble, and all of a sudden they turned into like believing all the hype, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And it's I don't know why people do that. I think it's just obviously they became the person they always wanted to be in their mind, and now they want to like, swing their thing around and be like, I'm the man kind of thing. And you're like, okay. Um, but at the end of the day, like if you want to boast, I made 200 million, or did you really make 200 million? You sold $200 million worth of houses.
Mm,
How much of that was given to Zillow?
right.
How much of
True.
that was paid out in referrals? How much of your overhead is your overhead, more than what you netted, and now you're taking loans because you're taking personal loans and you've saved nothing for your taxes, and then this is happening, our rent's due, we got this marketing thing that we should, because like people are just adding, it's that, I need
Hmm.
this because they have that, I have to have it. I
Mm.
think there's a lot of things being done reactionary versus like this is our plan and following the plan and the budget. We're not operating as how typical business is operating. And when you're an autonomous decision maker, it's just you and one other person, and basically you're making the decisions because the other person is someone you've hired and you're their boss. It
Hmm.
isn't doesn't function out like how normal businesses function. That's why small businesses really struggle.
Yeah, that's really true. So, what would be a strategy to counteract that kind of autonomous business maker mentality that can get us into hot water? Any ideas we can give the audience for
Yeah.
things that might help balance that?
I think depending on where you are in the business, and I think a lot of people watching these podcasts and searching are either getting into the business or trying to figure things out for themselves, or they're growing their business and they're like, what do I do next? Right.
Right.
And I think the biggest thing is like we talked about this in the past of getting a board of directors or getting someone
Yes.
that is neutral, that is not in your field, that you trust, maybe another business owner, maybe
Yep.
your spouse that you have a good relationship with, or maybe a family member that like a brother or sister that you're like, hey, I just want some consult on this. Like, do these numbers make sense to you? Would you do this? This is the ROI on that. And having an ability to bounce back and forth with people and say, like, does this make sense? And
Mhm.
I give you permission to call me out and say, like, that doesn't make sense, Meredith, don't do that.
Right.
And you have to respect that. And you can say, like, I respect that person. So if they said that, it's not a hell yes, we're not doing it. And to
Hmm.
pause and to think about like that person's not telling you not to do it because they don't think that you're capable of it. They're telling you to protect you. So
Exactly.
sometimes we do things because our ego gets in our way and we think we have to do things when we don't. Just like you have
Right.
a right to change your mind. I certainly did. Like this
Yes.
year, I had a huge changing of the mind, and I had a really hard time coming through that. And it
Yeah.
was a lot of shame about that, about closing the brokerage as the entity as it was to open up five. And I was like, there's a lot of judgment. Why would you do that? That didn't make it, a lot
Yeah.
of that going around. And I was like, you know what? Because I don't want that anymore.
Yeah.
It's okay to say that. But I think for a long time, I felt like I worked so hard to build that I was
Hmm.
going to stand on that like peak, and didn't matter how much I hated it or how miserable I was. I was like, I cannot, like that stubborn,
Yeah.
they won't
Yeah.
admit that they're wrong, but they're wrong. That
Yeah.
was me.
Yeah.
And I'll say it, that was me. And how many times are you doing that is what I would say. Not even at that level, but just in the business. Like maybe you're paying for the zip code that's not serving you and you're just hanging on to it because you're like trying to prove a point.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes I think too what we do is what we think we're supposed to do, and I think we've touched on this before as well, but there are lots of ways, and I think that's the other thing we don't get told when we start in this business is there are lots of ways to be successful. There are lots of ways to achieve. There are
Yes.
lots of ways to arrive at true fulfillment in a business like this one. And sometimes that's growing a huge team. Sometimes that is being a solo agent throughout your entire career. Sometimes that's selling your business when you retire. Sometimes that's handing it off to an apprentice of some kind. There are just lots of different iterations. There's not a cookie cutter way. And sometimes we get so caught up, like you said, in the ego wanting to strive for the things that we think somebody else has.
Yeah.
But the other thing that you probably don't get told a lot when you start in this business is all of the shiny objects that you're seeing on social media, the people who are presenting themselves, like you said, nobody shows up in their pajamas. Often the shinier the image, the more tarnish there is inside and the more they're fighting
Yeah.
internally. So that exterior representation of perfection is usually masking something that's far less perfect on the inside. So know that when you're fighting, when you put a video out that feels like it's not perfect, when you're feeling like you're having a day that's not 100%, that you're off in some way, that you're certainly not alone. Everybody has gone through it. Even the people who
Yes.
seem to be standing at the very highest peak have certainly gone through it. They might be going through it right now and you're just not seeing it. The
All
other
day
thing
long.
I will say is that one of the things I think that people should know getting in is that, and you sort of touched on this before too, that there are peaks and valleys, there are seasons in real estate. Real estate is not meant to be, nor is life, a constant trajectory toward any kind of like a Plymouth or summit. It's a journey that you're going to go through. You're going to learn so much as you go through each stage of the journey. You're going to feel like quitting often. You're
Yes, I
going to
agree.
have high highs, you're going to have low lows. You're going to be, if you're a great agent, you're tied empathetically to the clients that you help. And so your emotions are, because you're a human being, going to be tied to theirs in a way. And knowing that when you reach like a little bit of a lull, take a moment, listen to that space, create space around yourself to figure out what the next thing is for you. And sometimes the next thing is just the next right thing, right? Sometimes it's just putting one foot in front of the other. And sometimes you're in momentum. I just got off a coaching session with a client who started with me in kind of a rut and was in a place where he really didn't know if he could get his business back on track. He'd been very successful for a very long period of time, hit a plateau and then started to kind of like downslide a little bit. And as I was on the session, so between the last session and this one, we put like all these strategies in place for him, did a lot of mindset work, and he dug in, did the work. He has a listing, another listing lead, three buyers that he's actively working with. And as we were on the session, he got a text message. He was like, and he's like, one of my friends just said that her friend is moving here and she wants to buy a place in February. And I was like, oh my God. So that's the other thing. When you're in
Ah,
momentum, you're like a magnet. That energy magnetizes other good things to you. So give yourself the grace when you're in that valley. But when you're in momentum, man, celebrate it, let that energy out because it does bring more to you.
100%, 100% all day. I love that. That's so true.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
And
think it's the concept too of like it doesn't, you can be whatever you want it to be. So don't get so caught up in it has to be this way,
yeah, exactly.
you know?
Exactly. All right. What else? Anything else that you think we need to share with people that people would not have been told when they got into real estate that's important for them to know as they're getting in or as they're evaluating whether to keep being a
I,
real estate agent at a tough time?
I think it's about understanding that it's the hardest piece I think for people to understand is that it's the consistency of doing the same thing over and over again. It's like working out
Mhm.
well,
Yes.
and having a routine. Because I think people go into real estate because they want to do something on the side. I hear this a lot. I want to do something on the side, or I'm a mom and I want it to be around my schedule. I want to have a free schedule. I hear that a lot. I hear, oh, I love houses. It would be so fun. I think I could do it.
I love staging.
Yeah,
Love
I
to,
don't think they understand exactly what it is. And I
yeah.
think that's our fault for making it look like it's just all fun.
Yes.
But anybody that lives with an agent or has an agent in their family or their next door neighbor is an agent, like all my neighbors are like,
Yeah,
oh,
the truth.
knows again, like they're all hanging out having like happy hour. And I'm like, bye,
Uh,
I'm going to our house at 5:30 on a Friday,
yep.
and it's like, and that's my choice. That's what I choose to do. So I think it's not a business for the faint-hearted. It's not a business for a family that's not going to support it.
All right. Oh, so
If
true.
you have your family that's not supportive of you, it's very difficult to do this business because there's a lot that is taken from you in your personal life. There's a
Yeah.
lot that you have to share in order to succeed. You cannot live in a bubble in this business. And like how like in some worlds, like you can go to the office, do your office work and leave. You don't have
Yeah.
to tell them you're married. You don't have to tell them anything about you. You can just go do your work and leave. And
Yeah.
people will not even know anything about you. And it's fine, right? You can do your stuff, get your pay, and get out of there.
Hmm.
I would say real estate is not that way. You have to be willing to be vulnerable, to show yourself, to relate, to share your life with people. Most of your business is going to come from people in your life, so you to be okay with that being intertwined. And
Yes.
people don't like that, and I think some people have a really hard time. So then you're going to be transactional based business, right? And that
Yeah.
kind of business is a lot of roller coaster and frustration. So it just depends on like you have to make that decision for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. And I think it's the other thing that you reminded me of on this is I think a lot of people come to the business having been told, you'd make a really good real estate agent by somebody or multiple people. It always reminds me of like people who go on American Idol and everyone tells them they're a good singer, but they're not
Oh,
like, they're not
yeah.
really that caliber of a singer.
Like,
You have
no,
to, and then no one will tell them the truth, except for the judges, except for Simon Cowell back in the day. But this is that kind of thing where just because people tell you that you're a good communicator, just because you like houses, because you like decorating, you like staging, you like watching HGTV, what people really need to tell you is this is hard work. It is absolutely an effort of consistency, like you mentioned. And there's a lot of expertise and skill involved. And then there's also like more fine talent that needs to be there too, I think, to create the trustability factor that is necessary for a client to engage with you in their largest real estate transaction. So it takes a pretty robust skill set to be good at this. It takes a pretty exceptional skill set to be great at this. And on top of that, it takes a level of commitment, passion, drive, and desire that will fuel all of that. So when you come to this, I think that's the thing that most people need to know that they don't get told is not only is it hard work, but it is a labor of absolute love and commitment. If you have all of that, dive right in, stick with it. You'll withstand the ruts and the plateaus. You'll lift yourself out of them. But if you have any inkling that maybe that's not within you, it's probably not the right career.
I agree. I can't agree more.
All right. Well, hopefully we didn't talk everybody out of being a real estate agent in this. Hopefully we gave you guys some good advice and some tips and tools, but we did want people to know what you might not know having come into real estate. What I will say is if you are in that position where you have hit a rut, you've hit like a speed bump that you feel like you just can't get over for whatever reason, there are resources available to you. Alicia and I are both coaches for Tom Ferry, and I think that is a lifeline that a lot of people need because not only do you get the encouragement, the connection with other people who are going through the things that you are, but you also get some really applicable tactical skills and strategies that nobody else in the industry has access to that you can plug into. So consider a coach if you are in that rut. It's probably the best investment I think anybody can make in real estate. And if you've got that drive, if it feels like a calling to you, if it's your passion, stick with it. You will achieve success. Any closing thoughts, Alicia?
No, I think that that's beautifully said. And I think that when someone discourages you, how bad do you want something is how it's going to be
Mhm.
measured.
So
You know,
true. True.
just like what Michael Jordan like was turned down or something for basketball. I can't remember when he tried out
That's right.
and he was told no and that he sucked. And then like that happened with Tom Brady.
Yes.
But
Yep.
it's fascinating, right?
Yep, it fired him up and made him even more committed.
Yep.
All right. Well, if that's you, leave us a message. If you're watching this, send us a DM. Tell us what your thoughts are. Tell us where you are in your career. We would love to hear from you. And please, if you've enjoyed this show, hit the subscribe button. And we will be back with another episode very soon. This has been So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. We'll see you next time. Did you know that 63% of sellers and buyers choose their agent based on local proximity? That's why farming or geofarming is such a proven method for long term success in real estate. If you've been considering becoming a farmer or a geofarmer in your market, but not sure how to get started, check out Farming for Real Estate Agents. This blueprint will walk you through exactly how to choose a geofarm area, how to figure out by running some calculations whether the farm area that you're selecting can support your goals, and will help you track your return on investment. You'll also hear from locally famous farmers who have already dominated their market shares, so you can R&D their secrets and dominate the area that you choose to geofarm.